Welcome to Mormon Book Reviews, where an evangelical encounters the restoration. I'm your host, Stephen Pinecker, and I'm very pleased and honored to have on a fairly frequent guest, Jim Bennett, who's a good friend. Actually met him for the first time last year at Sunstone. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it this year because of my health condition. But Jim is really an awesome human being, and I really enjoy having him on. Earlier this year, we actually had a conversation about his father and his relationship with Howard Hughes, and also some stuff about Glenn Beck, and a lot of people enjoyed that episode. And I wanted to have Jim come back on the program because a lot of people don't realize this, but Jim is actually a member of the Tabernacle Choir, or what we'd like to call the Mormon Tabernacle Choir. And by the way, what do you think of the name change, Jim? Would you like to go back to Motab?
Oh, I'll get in trouble if I weigh in too heavily on that. So that should tell you where I am. Uh, you know, I am one of these guys that believes that sustain does not mean agree.
Uh-huh.
So I sustain President Nelson even when I don't agree with him, which means that I respect his authority and his authority to be able to determine the doctrine for the church and the teachings of the church. And so I try not to use the word Mormon out of respect for the prophet. At the same time, I'm a bit more of a Gordon B. Hinckley type. I think Mormon is, I think trying to eliminate that word from 200 years of colloquial speech isn't going to work. And I was actually quite sad when the Tabernacle Choir lost the Mormon.
Well, I went on Saints Unscripted last year and I said it's like changing the name of Coca-Cola. It was
Yeah,
so branded.
it is a
So
little bit like that. So I actually did join the Mormon Tabernacle Choir because that was the name on the stationery when I got my acceptance
okay.
letters.
So let's do this. Let's talk from the beginning. By the way, welcome to the program. I see
Thank
we
you.
avoided controversy there at the beginning. So that's good, Jim. We're doing better here. We're
There we
doing
go. Yes.
so
We'll see if it gets heated as we go.
yes, please. Let's see what happens, folks. Well, let's just see. Hold on tight. So I want you to tell us about what made you decide, were you approached to or did you want to join, did you volunteer to join? Just tell us the story about you becoming a member of the Tabernacle Choir. Or at the time, the Mormon Tabernacle Choir.
Um, I yeah, you don't they don't recruit people. You have to make the decision that you want to join. And there was a guy in my ward who was a member of the choir. And I said, boy, I think it would be fun to be a member of the choir. And he says, well, how old are you? And I went, and at the time I think I was about 45. And that's what I said. And he said, well, you get kicked out of the choir when you're 60. So, and you can't join after you're 55. So if you want to join the choir, you probably ought to do it fairly quickly. And at the time, my employment was such that I didn't think I would be able to do that or be able to dedicate the time to do it. And that changed around 2018 when I got my current job. And my wife actually said, hey, we're now in a place where our kids are old enough and your employment is stable enough and flexible enough that why don't you look at joining the choir? So she sort of suggested that to me, and I went, okay, sounds good. And so I was accepted to the choir when I was 50 years old. So I've been told I'll be kicked out of the choir in 2029.
Okay.
So I'm looking for, anyway. So the process is really sort of an arduous process. It's a 3-step process. First thing you do is you send in an audio audition.
Okay.
They tell you they want you to sing lines from hymns. They want you to sing sort of melody lines. And at the time, they wanted you to burn a CD and send it in. And even then, I thought that was an antiquated technology. And I had a computer that could burn a CD, but I didn't have a CD player other than that computer. And so I used my daughter's car where she had a CD changer. It was an older car and she still had a CD changer. And so I went and listened to my audition on that and went, okay, this is good. And I went and sent it in. And a few days later, my daughter called me and said, hey, I was listening to your audition. It sounds great. I think you're going to get in. And I went, well, wait a minute. If you're listening to my audition, that means the CD is still in your car. What did I send to the Tabernacle Choir? And a few days later, I got a call from the Tab Choir saying, "We think you've sent us the wrong CD." And it turns out what I sent them was my daughter's mix CD, and the first song on it was Kiss by Prince. So I'm imagining Mac Wilberg and Ryan Murphy sitting down to listen to what Jim Bennett sounds like, and the first thing they hear is, "You don't have to be rich to be my girl." And I thought, I'm in serious trouble. But they couldn't have been more gracious. They were very kind, and I didn't even have to burn a second CD. They said, just send us the audio file, which is apparently what they do now. And so if you make it past the first round, which I did, you go into a test. It's it's sort of a music theory test. You go in on a Saturday morning, and there are a whole bunch of choir hopefuls there. There were probably about 100 people there, maybe not quite that many. But they test. I was told it was a music theory test, and my mother is a Suzuki flute instructor. And so she sort of grilled me and helped me cram for the music theory stuff. You have to learn all of the terms and all of that stuff. And I knew most of it, but not nearly as much as I probably needed to. But the test actually was more of a focus on ear training. I mean, they would play a musical phrase, and then they'd play a second musical phrase that was slightly different, and they'd say, "Okay, tell us which note has changed." And that was really kind of tricky. And I'm told that test is really the big filter. If you can make it past that test, you're probably going to get in. But that test cuts out a whole lot of folks in that round. Many people don't make it past the second round. But I made it past the second round, and I went in for the third round, which was a live audition with Mac Wilberg and Ryan Murphy. Mac Wilberg, it's the most I've ever talked to Mac Wilberg. I've been in the choir now for 5 years, and I've never had any direct interaction with him other than that audition. And he was excited when I got in there because it was on my resume that I graduated from the University of Southern California, and he graduated from the University of Southern California. So we talked USC for a few seconds, and then I was asked to sight read a bunch of music, some of it with accompaniment and some of it not. Like they just hand you a piece of music and there's no pianist there, and they just say, "Sing it." And that was really tricky, and I botched it. I thought, pretty badly. And Mac at one point just said, no, that's not it. It's like, oh, okay, well, say goodbye to my chances to being in the choir. And I came out of that audition looking for validation. There was a woman there that was just sort of the gatekeeper, who had let me in. And I just said, boy, I think I really did badly. And I was waiting for her to say something nice. And she said, well, it is very hard. I went, thanks. Those are really comforting words. But I don't know if they were just short on men that year or whatever it was, but my botching of it wasn't enough to derail my attempt to get in the choir. I got a note saying, yes, we'd like to accept you to the. So you're not accepted directly into the choir. So it's such a long process. You're accepted into the choir school.
Okay.
And there's a choir school that started in January of 2019. And you also are accepted into the Tabernacle chorale. Every year there's a chorale concert where we did Chichester's Psalms, which is a lengthy piece by Leonard Bernstein. And every year they do a big, long choral piece, and active members of the choir join the first year choir school members for that chorale concert. And you actually have to do that chorale concert for 2 years. So you're in the chorale for 2 years, and that involves an additional rehearsal every Tuesday night. The choir rehearsals are on Thursday night. But when you're in choir school, it's chorale Tuesday night and choir school Thursday. And so, and you're not allowed to miss any of them. You have to have 100% attendance to go to these. So
Hmm.
you kind of feel like you're walking on a tightrope when you do this. But it was a lot of fun. The chorale concert was actually, I really enjoyed it. The choir school, I found a little tedious. I found it to be, I'm a middle-aged man now. Going back to what felt like high school was just a little much, but it was, I mean, the people who were involved in it are very capable, and it was fine. We went through the school, and what I'm told is that you take a final exam, and we were all very nervous about the final exam, and they told us you shouldn't be, because nobody fails out of choir school. If you're in choir school, if you do very poorly on the final exam, all they do is come and say, okay, here are areas where you need to improve, and we'll help you do that, but you'll still be allowed to be in the choir. So we went through that process. And my first day of choir school, Mac Wilberg comes down. The choir school takes place in the basement of the Tabernacle. And Mac Wilberg comes down to talk to you, to address you, and he gives you a speech that they're called the "you might be disappointed ifs." And you might be disappointed if you join the choir to be a television star. You might be disappointed if, I can't remember a lot of them until you got to the one that made me almost laugh out loud. And he said, you might be disappointed if you have original poetry that you want the choir to set to music. And I thought that was the funniest thing I'd ever heard. And after he'd left, and on that first day, there was a guy who's now no longer with the choir organization. He was the guy who planned all the tours. But he said, okay, I'm going to give you a tour of all of the tunnels under the Tabernacle. There's a whole Mines of Moria thing down there. Although they've all been shut down now as they're rebuilding Temple Square. We now have to park in the conference center and walk above ground over to the Tabernacle, which is kind of arduous. I miss the days when we could park in the church office building and take a tunnel into the Tabernacle, and you really felt like you were part of a secret conspiratorial club to be able to do that. But those are all shut down as they're remodeling and rebuilding Temple Square. But afterwards he said, "Are there any questions?" And I, being me, thought I'd be very clever, and I raised my hand and I said, "Yeah, are you the guy I submit my poetry to?" And he just looked at me like I had farted in his face. And it was just, and then he says, we just don't have, we don't have a need for smart Alex like that in this choir.
Oh, wow.
And I thought, oh my gosh, what have I gotten myself into? And then we took a tour of the tunnels, and I saw somebody in the choir who I've known for about 35 years. And I was very excited to see her, and I sort of got out of line and gave her a hug quickly and talked to her for just a second. And I came back, and he just looked at me stone-faced and said, "You're on thin ice." I thought, oh boy, this is going to be fun.
Oh, why?
And later on, somebody else says, "Congratulations, you've gone 5 minutes without getting into trouble." And so I thought at the outset that I was going to have a really hard time in the choir. I haven't had a really hard time in the choir. I've gotten into trouble a couple of times. I wore Crocs once to a choir rehearsal, and that's apparently not okay. And I also once bugged out of a concert during an announcement to go use the bathroom, and came back in. And they said, "You can't do that. You can leave, but you can't come back. If you leave a concert, you can't come back." And so, that was kind of interesting. But so that was my experience getting into the choir. Being in the choir is just absolutely delightful. It's just pure joy from beginning to end. You get to show up and sing beautiful music with extraordinarily talented people, and there's just no downside to it. There's nothing about it that isn't fun. And it's also, I mean, people say things like, well, it's such a sacrifice. You're sacrificing so much time to be in the choir. And I say, it's my church calling. Do you realize how much better this church calling is than 90% of other church callings? I've never been
You're
a
not you're
bishop.
not you're not cleaning bathrooms at the ward.
Right. Well, actually, I still have to clean bathrooms. I
Oh.
haven't gotten out of that. But they're not allowed to call you to any calling.
Right.
I think the term is calling of significance.
Mm.
Like I do have a calling. I am a substitute seminary teacher. And I've been called in to substitute maybe once over 4 years, so it's not a calling that takes any time. But uh, they're not allowed to call you to be in a bishopric. When I was in a bishopric, I've been in two bishoprics. That eats up an extraordinary amount of time. It eats up your entire Sunday, and it eats up meetings in the week. You have a bishopric meeting in the middle of the week, and other meetings will pop up, and you also are expected to sort of go to the young men's on another night of the week, and it just takes up. It's a part-time job, close to a full-time job. The choir's nowhere near that amount of time commitment. You have a rehearsal Thursday nights from 7:30. No, from 7 o'clock to 9:30 at the Tabernacle or in the conference center if it's the summertime or if it's Christmas time. And you have Sunday mornings. You get there at 7:25 in the morning. You got to get there a little earlier to change into your suit, and then you're done at 10. Sometimes they have extra rehearsals until 11:15, but then you're done. And you also end up skipping church because my ward meets at 10 a.m. every Sunday. I'm sorry, my ward meets at 9 a.m. every Sunday. And I can't go because I'm at music and the spoken word. So this gives you an opportunity to skip church. They do want you to go, and I do go and take the sacrament in a different ward to just find a place to take the sacrament. But that's easy enough to do. It's not difficult and not time consuming. So it's just, in my estimation, it is the perfect way to participate in the church because it's everything good about the church without any of the busy work, without any of the drudgery. It's always fun. And so I just, when I got in, they said, we hope you'll give us at least 5 years. And as I've been in it now, the one thing I haven't mentioned is that after about 9 months of actually being in the choir, everything shut down for COVID.
Yeah.
We all shut down, and then for 18 months, it almost felt like being in the choir had been a beautiful dream. It was almost like, was I really in the choir? Did that really happen? Because for 18 months, the choir shut down. But then we came back, and it's now going gangbusters. We've gone on tour now 3 times since I've been in the choir. When I joined, they told us, okay, we go on tour once every 2 years, and it's a very lengthy tour. It's about 3 weeks long. And they had planned a tour that was going to be actually a cruise that was going to start in Scandinavia. We were going to go to all of the Nordic countries, and going to Norway and Sweden and Denmark, but it was going to end in Scotland, which is where I served my mission. And I was just so excited. And then COVID hit, and they canceled the tour. They postponed the tour. And I went, okay, well, we'll go next year. And then they canceled the tour. And then I was really kind of disappointed. But the new choir presidency, which is led by Mike Leavitt, who's the former governor of Utah. He was elected governor of Utah the same year my father was elected to the Senate. He and my father were very good friends, and he spoke at my father's funeral. Mike Leavitt has really sort of, I don't want to say revitalized, because the presidency of the choir was very vital before he got there, but he's really very ambitious in terms of expanding the reach of the choir and and doing all kinds of things. The choir now broadcasts. We have a Spanish broadcast. There's a spoken word version of in Spanish that's broadcast in Spanish speaking countries. I think there's a Portuguese broadcast now. So the choir, so he's tried to make the choir a whole lot more global and international. And along with that, we have decreased the length of each individual tour, but we are increasing the number of times we go on tour. And so we are now on our Songs of Hope tour that is going to go until 2026.
Okay,
So
so I want you to talk a little bit about that because I actually had the privilege. I almost thought about making the drive to Fort Lauderdale, but it's quite a trek. So you just recently, a couple weeks ago, you guys did your first American performance of your latest tour, and this is part of the international aspect of the tour because it was half English and half Spanish, the entire thing, and
right.
also had the music choices also featured an international flair as well. Now I had the privilege to go to the Lakewood Ranch Ward and with my friend Allison, who's good friends with their family. And I was just remember they had the cameras spanning, and then I was like, oh, there's Jim. He's been on my program. It's like, oh, okay. So you did make a couple of appearances. Now, from my understanding, you don't get on camera too often, and
No,
but
we call all the back row tenors. I'm on the back row because I'm tall. I'm not the tallest in the choir. There's a guy in the choir that's 6'10",
oh wow.
really big guy, wonderful guy. He's over in the bass section. But all of us in the back row, we call that the witness protection program because nobody can find us. Nobody can ever see us.
And
So,
so yeah, and but I did catch a glimpse of you twice, so I'll have you know you were seen twice by me, and I was looking for you.
all
Um,
right.
and you got that great hair, so like that's you can see that spot that hairdo a
I
mile
have a
away.
lot of it. I have far more than my father ever did.
That's oh, that good point. So I wanted you to just talk about this new tour that you're doing. Like, have you been to other countries and just how is this tour? And just talk about this new tour of Hope. Is that what it's called? The Hope
I think they're calling it Songs of Hope.
Songs of Hope. Okay, so just talk about this latest tour.
Well, so the first time, and it's the first time I'd gone on tour, was last year, was last July, I think. We went to Mexico City. And that tour was very problematic because what they said to us was, um, don't drink the water because you'll get diarrhea. So what we've done is we've got someone to come and cater all of our meals, and you can trust anything that they feed you. Well, it turns out they fed us stuff that was washed in tap water. They fed us, and pretty much everybody on that tour got sick. Everybody got diarrhea, including me. And it was actually kind of a miserable experience. And I think 80 people that went on that tour who were down in Mexico City were too sick to perform. I was able to perform in all of the performances. I wasn't too sick to perform, but at one point, one of the first performances was in a Catholic cathedral, just a gorgeous, gorgeous cathedral in. It wasn't right in Mexico City. It was in Toluca, which is an hour or maybe 2 hours away. We all got in buses and went to Toluca to sing in this cathedral. But the downside to it was not air conditioned and it was
Oh,
beastly, beastly hot.
gee.
And I was standing there on the back row, and the risers that we had were really kind of unsteady.
Oh my goodness.
And I could look behind me, and there was a railing behind me, but the railing only came up to like the small of my back. And if I had fallen backwards, I could have tumbled and died. And about 2/3 into the concert, I started to get lightheaded.
Oh no.
And I went, "Oh my gosh, I'm going to pass out." And I thought, what do I do? I'm going to pass out. And I finally just sat down in the middle of a song. You're not allowed to do that. And when I did that, about 6 people who were in the choir organizations just started circling the risers, like, "What's wrong with Jim? What's going to happen? Is he going to?" And then I ended up standing back up. I only sat down for about 20, 30 seconds. And I stood back up and I finished the concert. And afterwards, they were like, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I'm fine." And they, I mean, they were very, very kind. And I said I wasn't sure what I should do, but I wasn't sure if I should leave because a couple of people during those concerts got too sick and they just left. They had to get off the risers and leave. And so that was my most precarious moment. But that tour was just marked by illness,
Hmm.
and at the end of it, everybody got COVID,
Oh no.
including me. I think I didn't test when I came home, but I was sick, and I was pretty sure it was COVID. And they said everybody else is getting COVID, and I just holed up, hunkered down for a few days, and it passed. So that concert was really problematic for those reasons. And it was funny because they were talking about things like, when a choir member has to step out because they're ill, all it means is a smaller choir. But when an orchestra member does that, it's problematic because you only have a certain number of people doing a certain number of parts, and and maybe if it's a violin, that's not a big deal. But if it's a tuba, you only have one tuba, and our tuba player got sick, and the reserve tuba player was on vacation in Argentina, and they had to fly him in from Argentina to come play the tuba to finish out the Mexico tour. So that Mexico tour, we completed it by the skin of our teeth. But the actual concerts, I thought were beautiful, and they were very well received. We performed in the largest arena in Mexico City and packed the place, and it was really a lot of fun. And it wasn't until the final concert where I was feeling good enough, I had recovered enough, where I went, okay, this is really fun. I'm really enjoying this, because the other concerts were I just want to make it to the end without having problems. And so that was a really fraught experience, and I think it also taught a lot of people when we went to our next stop to take a lot more precautions.
Mm-hmm.
So our next stop was the Philippines. I'm going to wander upstairs and put my dog out while I talk to you.
Yep, we'll do that. That's what
The
we do
dog
here
is
in India.
barking and crazy. Um, so our next stop was the Philippines, and that was just delightful from beginning to end. We didn't do as much Spanish speaking stuff in the Philippines, but we did do a couple of Tagalog songs. And I was really stunned to learn that in the Philippines, the official language is English. Everybody speaks English, and they speak good English. And Tagalog, they sort of lapse into Tagalog in conversational speech. Oh, my dog. Here, gotta get him out of here. And but it's not the predominant language.
Mm-hmm.
And we did this one song that I don't know what it means. It was called Hawak Kamai. And the minute apparently it was a big pop hit in the Philippines, and we did an arrangement of it, and that arena just exploded with excitement. I mean, it was just unreal, the kind of reaction we got. The Filipino audiences were just so appreciative and so excited by everything that we did. And after the concerts, they assign choir members to go meet and greet. You sort of wander out into the lobby and just shake people's hands and say thank you for coming. And in the Philippines, when we did that, I felt like Elvis. And they mobbed us. I mean, they just came up. Oh, can we have a picture with you? And I just thought, this is insane. I mean, we were just rock stars in the Philippines. It was just unreal. Just really a lot of fun. And so this last tour, we just got back about a week ago um, from um, from Florida and Georgia. We started in Florida, and then we went to Georgia, and all of the concerts were very different. You know, when we went to the Philippines, we had essentially the same program for every concert. Um, in Florida, we did the half Spanish, half English sort of concert that you're talking about. But when we got to Georgia, the Georgia concerts were designed to build a relationship with Spelman and Morehouse colleges, the two traditionally black colleges,
Okay.
historically black colleges in Georgia. And with their glee clubs, they've got the Spelman is the women's college and Morehouse is the men's college. And they each have a glee club, and they very often sing together, but they also sing, they do programs. You know, the men have a program and the women have a program. And we did one concert. It was the day of President Nelson's birthday. And we did a concert in the Martin Luther King Chapel that was just, I mean, it was just so uplifting. And it was just, in my mind, the kinds of bridges that we're building here, given the church's racial history and the difficulties we've had in that regard, the kind of bridges that we were building with Spelman and Morehouse were just something I never expected to see in my lifetime.
Hmm.
And just really encouraging that we're able to sort of, I mean, I still believe, I mean, and this is, I'm not lapsing into controversy. I believe that the priesthood ban was a mistake. And I think that in order for us to fully reckon with that, we have to accept that. I don't think it's enough to just say, okay, well, that was bad, let's move forward. I think we have to reckon with our racial past. But that said, the kinds of the kind of outreach that we were doing in Georgia, I think is very positive and very productive, and was really inspiring. And these glee clubs were just unbelievably talented. I mean, they just rocked the house. I mean, I just sat there in awe of all of the songs they sang. And, you know, they do a whole lot more choreography than the Tabernacle choir does. I mean, they were clapping and jumping, and it was just so much fun and so inspiring and so uplifting. And after we did that, we went and performed in the State Farm Arena, which is where the Atlanta Hawks play, a big old arena. And Spelman and Morehouse joined us for that concert too. And the other thing is that Kristen Chenoweth joined us for that concert, which is, I mean, she's, I think, probably arguably the biggest star that has been part of the Tabernacle Choir Christmas concerts in recent years. And it's interesting because she adores the choir, she loves the choir, and then she also is this big time LGBTQ advocate. And I wonder if that causes any kind of tension with the choir, but it doesn't seem to. I mean, she comes and she's just very effusive about how much she loves to sing with us, and we return that kind of sentiment. We're really excited to have her, and she brought the house down. She was absolutely wonderful.
I think she has an evangelical background, if I'm not
She
mistaken.
does. She
Yeah.
does.
Yeah.
She comes and visits choir rehearsals very often, which is interesting.
Hmm.
You know, a lot of people sing with the choir and then, you know, they're done. But Kristen Chenoweth, on at least 2 occasions, I think 3 occasions, this is the first time I've actually ever sung with her, been in the choir when the choir has sung with her. But on at least 3 occasions, she has just showed up to rehearsal and went, "Hey, it's me, Kristen. I'm so happy to see you. I'm so glad to be here." And on one of them, she talked about getting married and how wonderful it was that she had finally found a godly man that she could share her life with.
Oh, wow.
She was sort of speaking in those kinds of evangelical terms. But the fun thing is, whenever she shows up, she she totally embarrasses Mac Wilberg because she gives him a hug and she fawns all over him, and she talks about how cute he is. And Mac Wilberg is just not that kind of a guy. Um, he's not a cuddly. He's a. I actually adore Mac Wilberg, and I think he's brilliant. I think he's very much like my father in the sense that he's painfully shy, and so just is not really the kind of warm and cuddly guy that maybe people would want him to be. But Kristen Chenoweth treats him like he's that warm and cuddly guy, and you can see him turn beet red. He gets very embarrassed by it, and it's really kind of cute to watch. But anyway, so and that was the last tour, and
Oh,
our next assignment in February we are going to Lima, Peru.
okay.
And there are rumors, I would probably get in trouble. There are rumors of our next assignment after that that I think are 100% confirmed, but I don't think I'm supposed to say where we're going. I think I can say it's another South American country.
Okay. It's another South American country.
So,
Okay. I
so
thought maybe
another
we had a
South
scoop
American
here for a
country.
second.
I'm hoping that eventually this is supposed to continue until 2026. I'm hoping that we revisit Scotland as a
Hmm.
possible destination.
At
I
least
don't.
before 2029, right?
Yeah. Well, my father. So I was a missionary in Scotland. My father was a missionary in
Oh,
Scotland.
wow.
And when my father was a missionary in Scotland, one of his assignments was to plan the Tabernacle Choir visit to
Oh,
Scotland in the 1950s.
okay.
And he tells all these stories about the miracle of the fact that it rained the day of the concert, which drove everybody to seek something to do indoors. And so they got a full house as a result of that. But the idea of singing with the Tab Choir in Scotland would be an absolute dream come true. That I haven't heard that that's going to happen, but I am hopeful that it might.
So I just wanted to ask, we thank you so much for giving us kind of the insider and what it's like to be the process of getting into it. I just wanted you to maybe speak to tell the audience, describe to me, of course, it's a very diverse group, but who are the people of the Tabernacle Choir? What kind of people are they? I mean, I imagine they're wonderful people, and maybe just talk about the kind of dedicated work that they do and everything they do, and just the kind of, just tell us give us the flavor of the people of the Tabernacle Choir.
That's a good question. So very often people will come up to me and say, "Oh, you're in the Tabernacle Choir. Do you know so and so?" And my response is, "Well, are they a tall second tenor? Because if they're not, I probably don't."
Hmm.
You don't get a lot of opportunity to socialize with people other than the ones that are sitting right around you, and you're not supposed to socialize with them.
Hmm.
Matt gets kind of upset if you're a little too chatty up in the choir loft, but you do get to know the people around you. And one of the wonderful things about tour is that that's the place where that changes, because you're out, and you're away from your family. It used to be that you could bring your spouse on tour. They don't do that anymore. Your spouse had to pay to go on tour. All expenses are paid for choir members, but not for spouses. But they no longer do that. So you're out there with a bunch of people, and you're having every meal with these people, and you're doing all of this stuff, and there are recreational activities. And so most people then take that opportunity to say, okay, I want to get to know other people in the choir. And I've certainly done that. And one of the things that you do is you just sit down at a table at a meal and say, "Hi, I haven't met you yet. I'm Jim. Who are you? And so you meet a lot of people in the choir that way. I mean, so who are these people? All of them. You have to have a temple recommend. You have to be a member in good standing. You also have to have an additional recommendation from your bishop every 2 years. So they are all dedicated, believing, faithful members of the church. That's the one thing that unites them, unites us. Uh, I don't know if there's anything else that does. Well, geographically, you have to live within 100 miles of the Tabernacle. And so, but there are people that there are people that drive down from Logan, which is an hour and a half, 2 hour drive, and they do that twice a week. And I'm amazed by that. I live only about 20 minutes away. So it's not that big a deal for me, but it's a huge sacrifice for a lot of other people. I don't know. A lot of them have sort of performing arts backgrounds. I mean, I have a theater background, and I've met a lot of people that likewise have theater backgrounds or musical backgrounds. That's particularly true of the orchestra, because the orchestra, a lot of these people make their living playing musical instruments, whereas the choir, it's a lot harder to make your living singing choral music. So that's not the case for most choir members. But so yeah, a lot of them are sort of arts focused kinds of people with an artistic background. But professionally, we have accountants, we have school teachers, we have real estate agents. It's just people from every kind of walk of life that do this.
Interesting.
I hesitate to say this because this might be controversial, but I was surprised at how many members of the choir are LGBTQ.
Okay.
There seems to be at least in the men's section. The women's section, I know very few of the women. You really just don't get any opportunity to meet them except on tour. So I can't make any kind of judgment, but there are many members of the choir who are LGBTQ, and that has caused some controversy. There was one member of the choir who was posting about the choir. And I didn't know him when this controversy happened, but I've gotten to know him after the controversy because he was posting about being in the choir, and then a couple of weeks later, he posted something that said he was an LGBTQ ally, and posted something with the rainbow emblem. And Jacob Hansen quote tweeted that on Twitter and called for the choir to get him kicked out of the choir. And this post went viral. And this is a guy who had no real social media footprint. I mean, he just used Twitter occasionally. He wasn't, he wasn't a Jim Bennett or a Jacob Hansen that spends way too much time doing that sort of thing. And so he was completely unprepared for the kind of backlash that he got. He just got deluged with people saying, you need to get out of, you need to get this guy out of the choir. You need to kick him out of the choir. And he just didn't know what to do. He was just astonished. And I've since talked to him because I came to his defense against Jacob Hansen and said, this is inappropriate. He hasn't done anything wrong. He hasn't, we are not taught in the church that we have to hate LGBTQ people. And just saying you are an LGBTQ ally is not at all inconsistent with the teachings of the church. In my mind, it's entirely consistent. It's something all of us should be doing. But this was not the case with the Desnats and all of the people that came out to attack him. And I've since gotten to know him. We had a long conversation on tour talking about this. And I had sort of my own kind of problem with that. At one point, this was about 2 years ago, there was a pride parade in downtown Salt Lake. And every morning for music and the spoken word, you come in for a rehearsal, you do a run through of the broadcast, and then you have about anywhere from 15 minutes to a half hour of a break as the audience filters in, and you go out, and if it's a nice day, you can wander out onto Temple Square. And on this occasion, this was the day of the Pride Parade down in downtown Salt Lake, and I walked out to West Temple and saw somebody. They were building a parade float, and they had a banner, and it was a rainbow banner, and written on the banner were the words, "Know that you are loved." And I took a selfie in front of the banner and posted it on Twitter and said, "I can't think of a better message for a Sabbath morning." And there's one account on Twitter that has repeatedly tried to get me kicked out of the choir. And on this occasion, they reposted it and they tagged the choir on Twitter and they said, "Hey, Tabernacle Choir, come get your apostate." And it was just so ridiculously obnoxious. And this same account finally later, at one point, posted I had done something else that was LGBTQ friendly, and I can't even remember what it was specifically, but they posted the choir phone number, which is a publicly available number, but they posted and they said, "Hey, everybody, call the Tabernacle Choir and tell them that Jim Bennett is an apostate and tell them to get him kicked out of the choir." And I went, "Geez, this is just a bridge too far. This is too obnoxious." So I called the number because I know the woman who answers that number. She's a former member of the choir. She's a good friend. She's a delightful human being. And I called her and I said, "Hey, it's Jim. Has anybody called you and asked to have me kicked out of the choir?" And she laughed and she said, "No, why would they do that?" And I pointed her to this account and she went, "This is the most repugnant thing I've ever seen. Do you mind if I escalate this? Do you mind if I call this to the attention of church security?" And I said, "No, please go right ahead." And within 2 hours, that account was suspended from Twitter. So I don't know who in church security has that ability or has those connections, but the attempts to get people kicked out of the choir are not well received by choir leadership, which is to say, the choir leadership has been very, very supportive of me and very, very upset and dismissive of all of these accounts, including Jacob Hansen's account. I mean, in my conversation with this guy that Jacob Hansen was bullying, he said, "Yeah, I met with choir leadership and they said, we've got your back.
Okay.
You've done nothing wrong. We've got your back. This is entirely inappropriate." So these people that try to use the choir as some kind of, I don't know, football, some kind of political football to
Kind of
try
just trying to make it to bring the culture wars into the into the
people who
tabernacle.
are trying to use the choir as a wedge in the culture wars.
Yeah.
Are certainly not doing the church any favors. And the choir does not appreciate it. The choir just has no use for that. I mean, one of the things that is absolutely wonderful about the choir is how inclusive and ecumenical it is. Music and the spoken word is extraordinarily ecumenical. There isn't anything that an evangelical Christian or a Catholic or any believer, maybe people outside the Christian tradition might have some problems because it's very Christ focused. But for the most part, it's love, kindness, be kind to your neighbor, kinds of things. I mean, very, very sort of inclusive, broad messages. The culture war messages don't ever enter into it at all. And so it's really just a wonderful and an inclusive vehicle to spread Christ's love in the world. That's the focus. And and when people try to use it for other purposes, I think they shoot themselves in the foot when they do it.
I was just talking to my mom. My mom, for years, has listened to the Mormon Tabernacle Choir on the radio. Of course, in Chicago, you had a Bonneville-owned channel station that was a top 40 hits channel, and then
Yeah.
Sunday mornings they're doing music in the spoken word. So that's definitely part of. And of course, we have the Christmas specials that I really enjoy that they've been doing for like 25, 30 years now. And those are really well done. And of course, those are also very ecumenical as well. And it's really a beautiful thing. It's really one of those fruits that the church has produced that's good. The Tabernacle Choir. And it's always been part of the landscape and our, the some of the music that we've been listening to growing up has come from them. So we always appreciated the work of this great institution and appreciate the people of the institution. And it's nice to know that if you're a member of the choir, that they've got your back. And that's good to know because you're sacrificing a lot of time, you're putting a lot of effort into it, and it's good to know that you belong to an organization that's watching out for the people in it and protecting them. And I imagine you're proud, and that's probably one of your proudest things as you're a member of the church to be a participant in the Tabernacle Choir.
Well, absolutely. I describe it as one of the great joys of my life.
Hmm.
I mean, it is just pure joy from beginning to end. And I just pinch myself every once in a while to think that I am this blessed, that I have this kind of an opportunity. And that, when people talk about spiritual experiences in the church, particularly, all my life, I have felt the Spirit most powerfully, most immediately through music. That there is something about music, and it's not just religious music in my mind. I can I think there is a spirit and a power to pretty much all kinds of music, but that's the way I feel a connection to the divine, and always have. And so to be able to be in an organization that provides that connection in such a high quality and just magnificent way, I couldn't ask for anything better. I couldn't ask for anything more wonderful. And so it really is, it's truly just one of the great joys of my life. It has blessed my life in ways that I can't even begin to quantify.
Well, Jim, I want to thank you so much for being able to share with my audience the inside story of being a member of the Tabernacle Choir. It's really a privilege to have you as a friend. And I think many people are going to appreciate this conversation because a lot of people don't know the ins and outs of how it works and kind of feel like we can peek inside and see what's going on and all that. And that's very fascinating. So thank you, Jim, for doing this today.
Yeah, well, you're very welcome, sir. And if you're ever in Salt Lake, let me know way in ahead of time, because one of the benefits of being in the choir is that for a rehearsal on a Thursday night, we're allowed to invite musical guests.
Oh.
So if you're ever in town on a Thursday night, I can get you in, and you can sing with the Tabernacle Choir for a couple of hours if you'd be
Wow.
interested.
Wow. That would be a real honor and privilege. That's great.
We
And
had some of your buddies do that. What's the guy? What's
Jeff
the
McCullough,
pastor?
Pastor Jeff.
Yeah, Pastor Jeff sang with us.
Yeah, and his wife. Yeah, yes,
Yeah,
and his wife. She's a part of the worship team. I was just talking to Jeff the other day. His wife is part of the worship team at their new church that they're attending, and Jeff actually gives sermons once or twice a month there. You should visit his church sometime, Jim. I'll get you his information. You can check it
yeah,
out
I'd love
sometime.
to.
Yeah. So yeah, Pastor Jeff. Hey, good to see you. Good talking to you again the other day. Yeah, that's right. Evangelicals are participating in this whole process. It really is a beautiful thing. And then, of course, there's the haters out there that probably don't like the fact that Pastor Jeff and I are too friendly to the Latter-day Saints. But guess what? There's a lot of good people in both camps that want to have adult conversations, that want to bridge the gap and have meaningful conversations where we do talk about our differences, which is important to address them and not just, paper over them, but also recognize the fact that we're all God's children. We are all image bearers, and we should all be treated accordingly. So that's my word on this whole thing too. So folks, leave the comments, tell us what you think of this episode. I thought we were going to be controversy free, but then at the end, Jim Bennett has to add a little controversy, a little spice to the interview, but that's fine too.
Sorry
Always
about
appreciate it.
that.
No, that's fine. People, hey, I like people to come on and be their authentic self and tell it like it is. That's really important, and that's what I appreciate about you, Jim, is you don't hold back. You don't pull punches if you don't need to. If you don't feel that, if you don't, you feel like you need to, you do, but you also aren't afraid to speak your mind, which I really appreciate. As a host, I love guests like you. So folks, leave your comments, tell us what you think about Jim and the choir, what maybe some of your favorite songs that you liked them to sing and everything like that. And what is the Mormon Tabernacle Choir? What's that? Has it had an impact on your life, especially for those of you who are not members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints? We'd love to hear from you as well. So just a reminder, we have links in the description for those of you who'd like to financially support the channel on Patreon, PayPal, and Venmo. And of course, don't forget our merch store, MormonBookReviews.com, where you can buy some lively items. Couldn't do it without you with the financial support. It is greatly appreciated. And remember, the most important thing is this: all the voices of the restoration will be heard here on Mormon Book Reviews.